make of this?
Well, actually, I'm very curious. It's presumably, I guess I'm one of those under investigation.
And you just heard about this?
Yes, just read the clip on about 20 minutes ago.
Are you concerned that Barr's or Durham's investigation will find wrongdoing and seek to punish former intelligence officials?
Well, I don't know. I don't think there was any wrongdoing. I think at the time all of us were trying to navigate a very, very difficult, politically fraught, highly charged situation. I know for my part, my main concern was the Russians and the threat posed by the Russians to our very political fabric. And the message I'm getting from all this is apparently what we were supposed to have done was to ignore the Russian interference, ignore the Russian meddling and the threat that it poses to us. And oh, by the way, blown off what the then Commander-in-Chief, President Obama, told us to do, which was to assemble all the reporting that we could, that we had available to us, and put it in one report that the President could pass on to the Congress and to the next administration, and while we're at it, declassify as much as we possibly could to make it public, and that's what we did. And it's kind of disconcerting now to be investigated for, having done our duty and done what we were told to do by the President.
The announcement that U.S. Attorney John Durham's investigation is now a criminal probe has made a lot of folks nervous in this town. And they're all the same intel and media collaborators who spread the phony collusion narrative from the start. Minutes after seeing the news, former Obama Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, appeared on television. And was it just me, or did he seem to struggle to get out the right words?
Well, actually, very curious. It's presumably, I guess I'm one of those under investigation. I found the timing interesting, given the increasing heat around the impeachment inquiry.
Do you have any idea, what they might think may rise to the level of a criminal offense?
No, I don't. That's obviously an item of great interest to me.
Pass that depends. All right, for his part, former Deputy Director of the FBI, Andrew McCabe on CNN, sought to shift the focus of the convo.
There appears to be, within the administration, both from the president and now possibly with the attorney general as well, an underlying lack of trust. If those decision makers are not convinced, it suggests that they are not taking the Russian threat to the 2020 elections as seriously as they should. We made the obvious and rational decision to investigate.
Well, remember, McCabe is the guy who himself is under criminal investigation and is suing the DOJ in desperation. Perhaps McCabe or CNN's Jim Sciutto, or is it Sciutto, himself a former Obama national security official, might have thought about disclosing that in the conversation. And finally, did MSNBC hire Alex Jones?
This bizarro world treasure hunt for dirt on our own intelligence services to try to set up Russia's interference in our election as a false flag operation. According to this conspiracy theory, Russia didn't do that. Russia didn't intervene. What actually happened is that it was the Obama administration that was setting this all up as a frame job.
I actually felt bad for the folks over at the other networks last night. I mean, it came late. The news came late. They didn't have time to fully process it, marinate in it. Some tinfoil hats might have been on a little too tight. Well, these same people spent 2 years, of course, promoting the Russia hoax, and they hyped every detail of the Mueller probe while claiming it wasn't politically motivated. And instead of embracing an investigation by a highly respected attorney, well, they're just lashing out. They're trying to discredit Durham, of all people, who's as bipartisan accolades for him, but not any longer. This is happening exactly how you said it would. Oh, remember when you appeared on this show? The left is in full panic mode. Yeah. Where do they go from here beyond the smears that began last night of both Barr and Durham?
I don't think they have anywhere to go. I think Clapper was right. The timing was sort of odd, but in the exact opposite way that he thinks. These things have been ongoing investigations, Horowitz and Durham and Barr. But what's weird is I think in a strange way they help to explain this panicky psychodrama about the whistleblower, because on a scale of 1 to 10, melodramas about Trump's impeachment, it rates about a Stormy or a emolument clause about a 3, and yet they're predicating the entire impeachment case on this whistleblower who sort of violated the statute by going first to Adam Schiff's staff, who lied about it. His text doesn't match the official transcript. The statute itself was changed shortly before he filed. He worked with a Democratic law firm. It didn't make sense. He doesn't want to come forward. And you ask yourself, why did they predicate this whole latest push for impeachment on such a thin reed? And I think the answer is they have to change the news cycle, because the news cycle, to use an old English expression, the worm has turned, and it's going to be McCabe and Orr and Brennan and Clapper and Comey for the next 6 months. It's not going to be good, so they want to get this impeachment thing, as desperate as they are, out there to drive down Trump's polls, or to say that
it's all about 2020. The idea that this is about finding out the truth. It's not about finding. This is about 2020 election politics. And Molly, I have to play for you. This was some of what we heard last night as it was unfolding, as the news was coming out. Let's watch.
We're asking whether or not this is politically motivated. I mean, the president wanted a way to try to get to the bottom of this deep state conspiracy that he thinks is behind him.
Conspiracy theories that they're trying to deflect attention away from the entire impeachment proceeding.
Now conspiracy theories are rising to the level of legitimate investigation.
We know there was a criminal leak of information, of classified information. We know that happened because it appeared in the Washington Post. Thus far, we still don't know who did it. There have been no charges against the person who did it, despite this being a very serious crime. Now, whether Clapper was the person who directly did that or whether other people were involved is unknown at this point. But what's really unfortunate is years went by without any actual investigation, instead chasing, going down rabbit holes of this Russia collusion theory that ended, again, with not a single American being found to have done this. We do know from Clapper's testimony before the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence that he did like to talk to reporters. He was talking to reporters around that time. He has admitted that in that testimony. So,
well, someone gave the information to Ignatius.
And someone gave it to
Powell. I mean, remember, they have received a lot of documents, Victor Davis Hanson. The defense is entitled to exculpatory information. We're now seeing new text messages. Molly and I were just talking in the green room. There are text messages that have just been released in this filing that no one's seen before, that refer to leaks and a crescendo of leaks, and this is just wild stuff. We're getting a behind-the-scenes picture of how these agents were, from my view, my background in criminal defense. If I were Sidney Powell, I'd be making this exact argument. Well, you were really not in pursuit of the truth. You were in pursuit of a setup of Flynn. That's what it increasingly looks like. We'll learn more, obviously, as days and weeks go on. Molly, this is, I guess, where they're cornered. They're in a room with no doors.
Well, it's an amazing amount of projection. You remember that if there were even a hint of skepticism toward the Russia hoax or the probe of the Russia hoax, we were told that this was a threat to the Republic to have any questions about law enforcement, or that it was proof of guilt or whatnot. And yet, with no compunction, they're just flipping on that and saying that this probe is politically motivated. I think the problem is that the media have two issues with conspiracy theories. One, they've spread this hoax, this Russia collusion conspiracy theory, for years, dripping it out. Bombshells, walls are closing in, it's going to be the end.
Trump Tower.
And at the end, it was revealed that not a single American had conspired with Russia to steal the election. That's a huge failure, a huge embarrassing failure for the media and for the people who spread this hoax within the government and without. At the same time, they were saying that questions about the spying of on the Trump campaign, using human informants, wiretaps, national security letters, overseas intelligence assets, that was a that was a crazy conspiracy theory. It's not a crazy conspiracy theory. Now we actually have a criminal investigation into some of what was going on, and so they're being shown once again to have lied to their viewers, lied to their readers, or lied to the people about what was going on.
Another element of this breaking news last night came in the form of this filing that Sidney Powell, who's representing Michael Flynn. Now, everyone remember, Michael Flynn already pled guilty to making a false statement during that impromptu, sudden interview that he was asked to do with FBI agents. Well, check this out. His legal team is alleging that the agents tampered with the evidence to charge to charge Flynn himself with lying. So the 302 is the interview memo that's written after a subject is interviewed. And the question is, who edited this memo? How significantly was it edited? And Clapper effectively, I think, told the Washington Post reporter, according to Sidney Powell, to, quote, take the kill shot on Flynn after he obtained these leaked transcripts of Flynn's phone calls. Molly, Clapper's people deny this, but it was very curious, was it not, that David Ignatius received these, this information about these calls with Kislyak. And then suddenly the article appears, and then these agents proceed to interview Michael Flynn. Final thought here. I want to put up this one tweet, okay? This is Ellie Honig, a CNN analyst, who put this up last night. Let's look at it. It was bad enough Trump and Barr were wasting resources on this, but now they're fully weaponizing DOJ for political purposes. Attorneys general can be impeached, really.
It's an amazing statement, but what's important to remember is that the DOJ was weaponized and that this is a threat to the entire republic, whether it was their handling of the Clinton probe and then the dramatically different handling of the investigation into the Trump campaign. We saw widespread weaponization of our intelligence agencies and our law enforcement agencies. That's not good for everybody. We need to be able to trust in the rule of law. We need to be able to trust in these agencies. And so whatever needs to be done to clean it out is good. And obviously people are extremely nervous about being held accountable, but that's a good thing.
All right, guys, thank you.
And a Fox News alert, the United States has killed the world's most wanted terrorist, ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. U.S. Special Operations Forces cornering him last night in a compound in northern Syria. He apparently detonated a suicide vest as troops closed in. Here's President Trump just moments ago at the White House.
Capturing or killing Baghdadi has been the top national security priority of my administration. U.S. Special Operations Forces executed a dangerous and daring nighttime raid in northwestern Syria and accomplished their mission in grand style. He died after running into a dead-end tunnel, whimpering and crying and screaming all the way. The compound had been cleared by this time, with people either surrendering or being shot and killed. 11 young children were moved out of the house and are uninjured. The only ones remaining were Baghdadi in the tunnel, and he had dragged 3 of his young children with him. They were led to certain death. He reached the end of the tunnel as our dogs chased him down. He ignited his vest, killing himself and the 3 children.
We're back with Republican Congressman from Texas, John Ratcliffe. And Congressman, we have been reporting the breaking news of the morning that Islamic State leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi is dead. Our Special Operations Forces cornered him, and then he blew himself up. You said a moment ago you have not had a briefing on Syria in a long time in the Intel Committee that you, of course, are a member on. You have been focused on these impeachment inquiry testimonies, and on Friday you had one as well. We want to show you what some of your colleagues said after that testimony. Here was Kevin McCarthy and Devin Nunes on Fox News last week.
we had John Radcliffe destroyed Taylor's whole argument.
Congressman Radcliffe, tell us what happened.
Well, we can't really talk about it, but what we're finding is just his questioning in 90 seconds refuted everything of what Adam Schiff believes out there. There is no quid pro quo.
Congressman, we know that you're limited in terms of what you can say about these testimonies, but what can you tell us about that quid pro quo argument?
Well, what the Democrats wanted to believe was that Ambassador Taylor's testimony would support what the whistleblower said, when in fact his testimony established the opposite. He established as a matter of law and as a matter of fact that a quid pro quo involving military aid could not have occurred on July 25th in the call between Trump and Zelensky, because neither Zelensky or any Ukrainian was aware that there was a hold on military aid on July 25th. So as much as the Democrats who quickly tried to spin out of that and say, well, when we said quid pro quo on July 25th, we really meant sometime in August, and they were supported by the New York Times and the Washington Post printing articles saying, well, the Ukrainians found out about it in the middle of August. It doesn't matter. It still raises a real question now about the whistleblower's credibility and motivations, because the whistleblower came in to meet with Chairman Schiff before that. I want to understand why this whistleblower apparently has the ability to see into the future, came in to complain to Chairman Schiff about a quid pro quo that had not yet occurred. So again, the whistleblower's testimony has become more essential. The most important witness we should be hearing from is that person, because it'll tell us whether or not this was organic or whether it was orchestrated.
Congressman, we know that the Islamic leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi has blown himself up as he was cornered by special operations troops overnight, and he is now dead. The leader of ISIS is dead, and obviously the administration is seeing this as a major victory for the country, and yet you on the Intel Committee have not had a briefing on Syria in a long time. We have our We have upcoming Lindsey Graham about to speak at the White House. We want to get to that right now and get your reaction. Stay with us, sir. Watch this.
It does matter, I think, to the world, not just the United States. And trying to put in words what does it matter, how to explain it. I think last night the best of America confronted the worst of mankind, and the good guys won. The good guys and the good gals won. The dog. Trying to find out the name of the dog. Pray for the dog. It was severely injured, but it just reminds me of the team concept of the military. I've been talking to the president for months about the war on terror, and every time I would bring up the topic, he would tell me without any hesitation, I'm going to get that blank guy. And I can't use the word on television, but the president's been determined for a very long time to bring Baghdadi to justice. And I want to compliment him and his team.
With Congressman John Ratcliffe, who sits on the Homeland Security as well as Intel committees. And of course, Congressman, you have been on the Intel committee but focused on something altogether different as the White House has been pursuing al-Baghdadi. You have been knee-deep in the impeachment inquiry. That's where we left off before Senator Lindsey Graham was speaking. You want to finish your thought there, and then I want to ask you to connect the dots here, because we are waiting on the IG report, which we're fully expecting FISA abuse. And of course, last week we learned that now John Durham's investigation has turned criminal.
Right. Well, I think that we've been spending far too much time on this impeachment inquiry, but if we're going to do it, let's talk to the most important witnesses. Every American deserves to know when Adam Schiff's staff met with this whistleblower that started a process to try and remove the president from office. And I think every American sees that Adam Schiff, the person who promised that Donald Trump was going to see significant jail time because he had substantial evidence of collusion with Russia, and that he was engaged in treasonous activity as a Russian agent, which ultimately proved not to be true, shouldn't be the person running this impeachment inquiry, and it shouldn't be running through the Intelligence Committee and behind closed doors meetings that we can't talk about openly. So hopefully that'll end, and what the people just saw there, I agree with what Lindsey Graham just said about the president really changing the rules of engagement. He's doing that across the board with respect to fighting terrorism, with respect to approaching trade deals, with respect to how we grow the economy, all of those things. Give this president credit. While he's attacked shamelessly, baselessly, repeatedly by his critics, he keeps providing solutions and doing good things for the American people, and I think they see that.
And do you expect in the IG report that we will see criminal referrals from the Inspector General, and what will that mean for John Durham's investigation, which is now an out-and-out criminal investigation?
Well, I don't believe in coincidences, and the end of the Inspector General's investigation and his impending report coming at the same time as the start of John Durham announcing that this is now a criminal probe is not a coincidence. The Inspector General, you have to remember, has the ability to investigate folks at the Department of Justice and the FBI. He doesn't have the ability to indict. He can only make criminal referrals. He's done that before with respect to the director of the FBI and the deputy director of the FBI. And as I have been telling you for the better part of 2 years here, we have seen things that we believe are the basis of should be a criminal referral as it relates to the FISA process that the Inspector General's report that's coming out in the next week or two will address. John Durham announcing that this is now a criminal matter is a significant development. It means that there is a reasonable indication or suspicion that crimes have occurred. Doesn't mean that he's going to charge anyone, but it does mean that he's going to impanel a grand jury to compel testimony, subpoenas, and people, documents and people to come and address the origins of this Russia investigation where a president was accused of treason, falsely accused of treason, by a party that paid for a fake, phony dossier, and the Democrats are now unhappy that John Durham is looking at whether or not there was a proper predicate for it. I don't believe there was.
And we should also point out that one of the people who accused the president of treason quite publicly was John Brennan, the former CIA director, and John Brennan's fingerprint seems to be all over the origins of the Russia probe.
The importance there, again, of John Durham having the ability with a grand jury to bring in folks outside of the Department of Justice, outside of the FBI, which Michael Horowitz couldn't do and can't address in his report. John Durham will have the ability to bring in intelligence officials like John Brennan, like James Clapper, and explain why this, how this Russia Trump collusion, treason investigation got started, where the proper predicate was for it. And again, there are real questions about that, and I have great confidence in Attorney General Bill Barr and John Durham to get answers to that, and many of us think it's long overdue that there's accountability for much of what has not been explained about a claim against President Trump that was clearly false, and the special counsel said as much.
Congressman, it's good to have you on the program this morning. Thanks so much.
You bet, Maria.
Heard any reaction from any of the Democrat leadership this morning. I was looking earlier on Twitter and on social media for any statements. We have not heard any statements that, in fact, the news of the day is that the leader of ISIS, the worst terrorist organization we know, has been killed by our special operations. So by any stretch of either side of the aisle, one would think that this is a major victory for the United States and the world, frankly.
You would hope, but Speaker Pelosi and Adam Schiff and Chuck Schumer, they're just focused on one thing. That's the election next November. I mean, when we look at what is happening here, and again, this should be something celebrated by all parties, no Democrat, Republican, but especially Americans and especially world. ISIS separated themselves. Their leader al-Baghdadi separated themselves out and did not want to participate in the world as we know it. They did not want to be a part. They wanted to kill everything and be a part, disrespect themselves from everything that a civilized world knows. Yeah. Everyone should this morning should be praising that. And to see the silence on there, maybe they're upset that maybe their impeachment headlines are knocked off the front page for a morning. Maybe they're just worried that they don't know what to say. But I would encourage the Speaker, this is a good day for America. It's a good day for this administration, and it's a good day for everyone who serves.
And in terms of the John Durham investigation now, a criminal investigation, this enables them to call and panel a grand jury and subpoena witnesses. Who would you expect to be the people that the grand jury would hear from in terms of this criminal investigation?
Well, it's interesting to see exactly, and I agree that I don't think there's a coincidence with the Horowitz report coming to an end and the investigation expanding. I think there's also the significance of the investigation expanding into the intelligence community in which the Horowitz report could not touch. I think you're going to see intelligence community people call in. I think they're at different levels, including up to the top. Brennan, Clapper, others should be worried about this, I believe, because they have had their fingerprints all over this as you see what has been going on over time. But I think as you move forward, you probably even see some of the corrupt cabal that we've talked about before of Comey and McCabe. There's all kinds of ways that Durham can get at this, and it's good to see it actually turning into this. And it's been patience. Instead of actually trying to rush to decision, the DOJ under Bill Barr has said, let's look at this. Right. When he first got there, he said, I want to know what actually happened here, and I don't want a soft version. So he's been forceful about it.
Congressman, thank you so much. Good to see you this morning. Welcome back. We just got a statement from Nancy Pelosi's office, and she says this: the death of al-Baghdadi is significant, but the death of this ISIS leader does not mean the death of ISIS. Nancy Pelosi writes, she says the House must be briefed on this raid, which the Russians, but not top congressional leadership, were notified of it in advance, and on the administration's overall strategy in the region. Our military and allies deserve strong, smart, and strategic leadership from Washington, writes Nancy Pelosi. I'm talking with Christian Whiting right now from the State Department. And Christian, your reaction to Nancy Pelosi's statement?
Well, I think that's a petty and disgusting statement from someone who has become deranged with politics. Just say thank you, well done. We love our troops. You did a great job. We notified the Russians before the House. Well, guess what? She leads a different branch of government. It's the legislative branch. They make laws. They don't execute the laws. Did Franklin Roosevelt talk to congressional leaders before the Doolittle raid on Tokyo? No. The reason we talked to the Russians was because their military forces in the area, and we would be conflating ours with them, so it made sense operationally. This just, I think, goes to this intense politicization of everything we see in Washington today. And the president is under no obligation to brief congressional leaders in advance of tactical, fairly small-scale military operations. And the fact that she would raise objections, I think, is just so petty.
Well, we should point out that earlier on the program, we had on John Radcliffe from the Intel Committee, and he said that there have been no hearings on Syria in weeks. And, it's Nancy Pelosi and Adam Schiff who are making the rules in terms of what testimonies they can hear from and what briefings that the House comes from. I mean, they're in charge, and they're focused on impeachment and not a lot more. Christian, it's good to see you this morning. Thank you.
The most dangerous part, we had great cooperation with. Yes, ma'am.
Inform Speaker Pelosi ahead of time?
No, I didn't. I didn't do that. I wanted to make sure this kept secret. I don't want to have men lost and women. I don't want to have people lost.